They were told Americans would do unspeakable things to Japanese women. They were told capture meant torture, shame, and death. So when 23 Japanese military nurses were brought to an American field hospital in the Philippines in August 1945, they screamed, they fought, they begged to be killed instead. "Don't touch me," one nurse shrieked as an American doctor approached her. She expected a monster, but what she saw instead changed everything she believed. The doctor wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was wiping tears from his own eyes. This is the true story of what happened next. A story of fear, mercy, and the moment when enemies became something else entirely. If stories of humanity in the darkest times move you, make sure to like and subscribe for more true accounts from World War II. The Philippine jungle steamed under the August sun. It was 1945, and the war that had torn the Pacific apart for 4 years was finally dying. Emperor Hirohito's voice had crackled over radios just days before, speaking words no Japanese person had ever heard their god emperor say, "Surrender." But in the dense green hills outside Manila, pockets of Japanese soldiers and medical staff still hid in caves and makeshift camps. They had heard the emperor's broadcast, but many refused to believe it. Others simply had nowhere to go. The jungle had become their prison long before the Americans found them. Among these survivors was a group of 23 women. They were not soldiers. They were nurses, young women who had volunteered or been assigned to serve the Imperial Japanese Army's Medical Corps. Their white uniforms had turned brown with mud and blood. Their caps were gone, lost somewhere in the months of retreat. Their faces were hollow from hunger, their eyes dark with exhaustion and something deeper, terror. The oldest among them was 28. Her name was Yuki Tanaka, and she had been a nurse for 6 years. The youngest was barely 19, a girl named Hanako, who had joined the medical corps straight from nursing school in Osaka, dreaming of serving her country. Now she huddled against Yuki's shoulder, shaking so hard her teeth chattered despite the tropical heat. The American trucks rumbled up the muddy road, their engines loud and foreign. To the Japanese nurses, crouching in the back of a canvas-covered vehicle, every sound felt like a death sentence. The smell of diesel mixed with jungle rot. Flies buzzed around wounds that hadn't been properly treated in weeks. Someone was crying softly, a continuous, hopeless sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Through gaps in the canvas, Yuki caught glimpses of the world outside. American soldiers walked past, their uniforms clean compared to her own rags. They carried weapons casually, laughing and talking in that strange, sharp language. Some of them glanced at the truck, and Yuki quickly looked away, her heart pounding. The truck stopped. Doors slammed. Voices shouted in English. Yuki understood nothing except the tone. Commands, orders, the language of conquerors. She reached for Hanako's hand and squeezed it tight. "They're going to kill us," Hanako whispered. "They'll hurt us first, then kill us. That's what they do." Yuki didn't answer. She had heard the same stories. Everyone had. Japanese propaganda had painted the Americans as demons, savage beasts who tortured prisoners for sport. Officers had told them that death was preferable to capture, that honorable Japanese women should take their own lives rather than fall into enemy hands. Some nurses in other units had done exactly that. Yuki had seen the bodies. But Yuki hadn't been able to do it. When the moment came, when the American soldiers had surrounded their hiding place and called for them to come out, she had frozen. And now here she was, alive, riding toward whatever fate the enemy had planned. The canvas flap opened. Sunlight flooded in, blinding them. A figure stood silhouetted against the brightness, tall, broad-shouldered, unmistakably American. "Come on out," a voice said in broken Japanese. "No one hurt you. Come." No one moved. The nurses pressed against each other, 23 women trying to disappear into the shadows of the truck. Yuki felt Hanako's nails digging into her arm hard enough to draw blood. Later, Yuki would write in a small notebook she managed to keep. "We sat in that truck like rabbits in a trap, waiting for the hawk to strike. Every breath felt like it might be our last. I think some of us wished it would be." The American soldier who had spoken climbed into the truck. The nurses scrambled backward, pressing against the metal sides until they could go no further. One woman began to pray aloud, her voice high and frantic. Another had her eyes squeezed shut, lips moving silently. But the soldier didn't grab anyone. He didn't raise his hand or his voice. Instead, he crouched down to their level, making himself smaller, less threatening. He was young, maybe 25, with sandy hair and tired eyes. A medic's armband circled his sleeve. "Nurse," he said, pointing at himself, then at them. "You, nurse? Medical?" He mimed, wrapping a bandage. "Help people? Same like me." Yuki stared at him. She understood the word nurse. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at her to stay silent, she nodded. The soldier's face broke into a smile, a genuine, warm smile that looked completely out of place in this nightmare. "Good," he said. "Good. Doctor wants to help. Hospital, medicine, food, okay? Safe. You safe now. Safe." The word meant nothing to them. There was no such thing as safe. Not anymore. Not for them. One by one, the nurses were guided out of the truck. Their legs were weak from days of hiding, their bodies screaming with pain from injuries and illness. American hands reached out to steady them, and each time, the women flinched as if burned. "Don't touch me," a nurse named Michiko screamed when a soldier tried to help her down. She fell to her knees in the mud, sobbing. "Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Please!" The soldier stepped back immediately, hands raised. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. No touch. It's okay." Yuki helped Michiko to her feet. Together, the nurses shuffled toward a large tent that had been set up nearby. Above its entrance, a red cross hung limply in the humid air. A field hospital. The Americans had brought them to a field hospital. Inside the tent, the smell hit them first. It was the smell of a real medical facility. Antiseptic, clean bandages, alcohol. After months of treating wounds with torn cloth and prayers, the scent was almost overwhelming. Metal tables gleamed under electric lights. Actual electricity. Bottles of medicine lined wooden shelves. IV bags hung from stands. A man in a white coat stood near the entrance. He was older than the soldiers, perhaps 50, with gray hair and glasses that sat slightly crooked on his nose. His coat had bloodstains on it, the marks of recent surgery. He looked at the Japanese nurses, and his face changed. Yuki expected disgust. She expected hatred. The Japanese had killed American soldiers by the thousands. She had heard stories of what happened to American prisoners in Japanese camps. Surely this doctor knew those stories too. Surely he would look at them with the cold eyes of revenge. But that wasn't what she saw. The doctor's eyes moved from nurse to nurse, taking in their condition. He saw the bones showing through skin. He saw the infected wounds, the signs of malaria and dysentery, the damage that months of jungle survival had done to their bodies. He saw 23 young women who had been reduced to walking skeletons. And then, to Yuki's complete shock, his eyes filled with tears. "My God," he whispered. He removed his glasses and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "My God, what happened to you?" He stepped toward them, and immediately several nurses cried out in fear. The doctor stopped. He looked at them, really looked, and seemed to understand. He sat down on a nearby crate, bringing himself below their eye level. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "I'm Dr. William Hartley," he said. An interpreter had appeared beside him, a Japanese-American soldier who began translating. "I'm a doctor. I've been a doctor for 25 years. I've treated American soldiers, British soldiers, Filipino soldiers, and now I want to help you. That's all I want to do. Help." He held up his hands, showing them empty. "You're nurses. You understand. You've dedicated your lives to helping people who are hurt. So have I. That's what we do. We help. It doesn't matter what country, what uniform. When someone is suffering, we help. Please, let me help you." No one moved. The interpreter finished speaking. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Then Hanako, young, terrified Hanako, collapsed. Yuki caught her before she hit the ground. Hanako was burning with fever, her skin dry and hot. She had been hiding her illness for days, too afraid to show weakness. Now her body had simply given up. Dr. Hartley was on his feet instantly. "Bring her here," he said, pointing to a clean cot. "Quickly, she's dehydrated. Probably malaria." Yuki hesitated. Every instinct told her to pull Hanako away, to protect her from the enemy doctor. But Hanako's breathing was shallow, her pulse thready. Without help, she would die. Yuki had seen enough death to know what it looked like when it was coming. Slowly, supporting Hanako's weight, Yuki moved toward the cot. American medics stepped back to give her space. Dr. Hartley didn't touch either of them. He simply directed his staff, pointing and giving orders while the interpreter translated for Yuki. "I need to examine her," the doctor said. "Check her temperature. Listen to her heart. May I? You can stay right beside her. You can hold her hand the whole time." Yuki looked at Hanako's pale face. She looked at the doctor's steady hands, ready with a stethoscope. She made a decision that went against everything she had been taught. "Help her," she said in Japanese. "Please help her." What happened next would stay with Yuki for the rest of her life. Dr. Hartley examined Hanako with the same care and attention she had seen Japanese doctors give to their own soldiers. He spoke softly, explaining what he was doing, even though Hanako couldn't understand. He called for IV fluids, quinine for the malaria, cool cloths for her fever. He treated a 19-year-old enemy nurse as if she were his own daughter. When the IV was in and the quinine was flowing, Dr. Hartley turned to the other nurses. "Who else needs help?" he asked through the interpreter. "Don't be afraid. Please. Let us help you." One by one, the nurses came forward. One by one, the walls of fear began to crack. Yuki wrote later that night, "He cried for us. The enemy doctor cried for us. I don't understand this. I don't understand anything anymore." The first week passed in a blur of medical treatment and cautious observation. The Japanese nurses were housed in a section of the field hospital that had been curtained off for privacy. They slept on real cots with real blankets, clean blankets that smelled of soap instead of mold and sweat. Each morning, American medics brought food. Not the rotten rice and occasional rat meat they had survived on in the jungle, but actual meals, bread, vegetables, canned meat, and fresh fruit. The first time Yuki bit into a piece of white bread, she had to stop herself from crying. It was soft. It was fresh. There were no weevils hiding inside. Hanako's fever broke on the third day. When she opened her eyes and saw the American flag hanging outside the tent, she started to scream. Yuki had to hold her, whispering that it was okay. They were safe. The Americans weren't going to hurt them. It took an hour for Hanako to stop shaking. But slowly, impossibly, the nurses began to adjust. Dr. Hartley visited them every day, always with the interpreter, always keeping a respectful distance. He checked their wounds, adjusted their medications, asked about their symptoms. He never rushed. He never touched them without asking first. "You're nurses," he said during one visit. "You understand better than most what we're doing and why. I want you to feel like colleagues, not prisoners. If you have questions about your treatment, ask. If something doesn't feel right, tell me. Your health matters to me." The interpreter relayed his words. The nurses exchanged confused glances. Colleagues? The word felt foreign, impossible. They were enemies. How could enemies be colleagues? 2 weeks after their capture, letters began to arrive from Japan. The Red Cross had helped establish mail routes, and families who had feared their daughters were dead suddenly learned they were alive, and in American hands. Yuki received a letter from her mother. Her hands trembled as she opened it, not knowing what news it would bring. The words blurred through her tears as she read. "My dearest Yuki," her mother wrote, "our city is gone. The bombs destroyed everything. Our house is ashes. Your father died in the factory collapse. Your brother has not come home from the war. I am living with your aunt in the countryside. We eat whatever we can find. Some days there is nothing. But you are alive, and that is enough. Whatever the Americans do to you, know that I love you. Survive, my daughter. Please survive. Yuki sat holding the letter for a long time. Her father was dead. Her brother was missing. Probably dead too. Her home was gone. Her city was destroyed. And here she was, eating white bread and sleeping on clean sheets, while her mother starved in the ruins of their country. Other nurses received similar news. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Tokyo, Osaka. City after city had been bombed into rubble. Families had been scattered or killed. Japan was not the empire of their dreams anymore. It was a broken nation, defeated and desperate. And yet the Americans kept feeding them, kept treating their wounds, kept calling them colleagues. The contradiction was almost too much to bear. It was the small things that broke through their walls of fear. One American medic, a young man from California named Tommy, had a harmonica. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, he would sit outside the nurses' quarters and play. He didn't try to talk to them. He just played soft, sad songs that drifted through the canvas walls. One night, Yuki found herself humming along. The melody reminded her of home. Another time, a soldier noticed that Michiko, the nurse who had screamed, "Don't touch me," on the first day, was shivering in the cool evening air. Without a word, he took off his jacket and left it on a crate near her tent. When she found it the next morning, there was a note tucked in the pocket. The interpreter read it for her. "It gets cold at night. This helped me through a lot of rough times. I hope it helps you too." Michiko kept that jacket for the rest of her life. Perhaps the most significant moment came when Dr. Hartley learned that it was Hanako's 20th birthday. She had mentioned it to Yuki. Quietly, sadly, she had thought she wouldn't live to see it. Somehow, the doctor found out. That evening, he appeared at their quarters with a small cake. It was nothing fancy, just something the camp cooks had put together with what they had. But there were candles on top. 20 candles. "Happy birthday, Hanako," Dr. Hartley said through the interpreter. "Every life matters. Every birthday matters. I'm glad you're here to celebrate this one." Hanako stared at the cake. She looked at the American doctor who had saved her life. And then she did something none of them expected. She bowed, deeply, formally, the way a Japanese person bows to someone they truly respect. "Thank you," she said, in careful, heavily accented English. It was one of the few English phrases she had learned. "Thank you, doctor." Dr. Hartley bowed back. It was an awkward bow. Americans didn't bow, but he tried. And somehow, that clumsy attempt meant more than any words could have. That night, Yuki wrote, he bowed to her. The enemy doctor bowed to a Japanese nurse. "I keep waiting for this dream to end, for the real horror to begin. But it doesn't. Each day brings more kindness. Each day makes less sense." A month passed. The nurses' bodies healed, but their minds remained at war. Late at night, when the camp was quiet, they would whisper to each other in the darkness. Some were angry, at themselves for accepting American kindness, at the situation that made them grateful to their enemies. Others were simply confused, unable to fit what they were experiencing into the picture of Americans they had been given. "We were told they would torture us," Michiko said one night. "We were told they would do terrible things. Our officers said death was better than capture, but they gave me a jacket. They gave Hanako a birthday cake. This isn't torture. Maybe it's a trick," another nurse suggested. "Maybe they're making us comfortable before something worse." But weeks became a month, and a month became 2. Nothing worse came. No torture, no cruelty, just medicine, food, and small kindnesses that eroded their certainty like water wearing away stone. Yuki found herself lying awake at night, staring at the canvas ceiling, her thoughts churning. She thought about the propaganda posters she had seen growing up. Americans depicted as demons with fangs and claws, monsters who ate children. She thought about the stories her officers had told, the warnings about the fate worse than death that awaited captured Japanese women. Then she thought about Dr. Hartley's tears, about Tommy's harmonica, about the jacket, the birthday cake, the careful respect the Americans showed every time they interacted with the nurses. Someone had lied to her. Either the Americans were the most patient, elaborate actors in history, or everything she had been taught was wrong. The transformation truly began when Dr. Hartley made an offer. The field hospital was overwhelmed. Wounded soldiers, American, Filipino, and even Japanese, arrived daily. The American medical staff worked around the clock, but there simply weren't enough hands. Dr. Hartley came to the Japanese nurses with a request. "You're trained nurses," he said through the interpreter. "You have skills that could help save lives. Would you be willing to work? Not as prisoners, as medical staff. You'd be treated the same as any other nurse here. Paid the same, fed the same, respected the same." The nurses looked at each other. Work in an American hospital? Treat American soldiers? The idea seemed impossible, treasonous even. But then Dr. Hartley added something else. "There are Japanese wounded too," he said. "Soldiers found in the jungle, just like you. They need care. They need people who speak their language, who understand them. You could help your own people while helping us." Yuki was the first to say yes. The others followed. Working in the American hospital was strange beyond words. Yuki found herself changing bandages on American boys who were younger than her brother. She held the hands of dying Filipino soldiers and whispered comfort in a language they didn't understand, but seemed to appreciate anyway. She watched American and Japanese wounded lying in beds side by side, tended by the same doctors, given the same medicine. "We killed each other," she whispered to Hanako one day. "We were trying to kill each other just weeks ago, and now we heal each other," Hanako finished. "Maybe that's what it was always supposed to be. Maybe this is what nursing really means." The moment that changed everything for Yuki came on a quiet afternoon. She was helping Dr. Hartley change the bandages on a badly burned American soldier. The young man, barely 20, had been caught in an explosion. His face was wrapped, his hands were wrapped, and his voice was hoarse from screaming during the early days of his recovery. Now he was quieter, but the pain was still there in every breath. As Yuki worked, she noticed something on the soldier's bedside table, a photograph. A woman holding a baby, smiling at the camera. "Your family?" she asked in her limited English. The soldier turned his head toward the photo. "My wife," he said, "and my son. He was born after I shipped out. I've never met him." Yuki looked at the photograph. She looked at the burned young man who had a wife and a baby waiting for him somewhere in America. She thought about her own brother, missing somewhere, probably dead. He had a wife too. He had dreams. He had been a person, not just a soldier. They were all just people. Japanese, American, Filipino. They were all just people who wanted to live, who had families who loved them, who had dreams that the war had interrupted. "I hope you meet him," Yuki said softly. "Your son. I hope you meet him soon." The soldier looked at her, this Japanese nurse, his former enemy, and smiled beneath his bandages. "Thanks," he said. "What's your name?" "Yuki." "Thanks, Yuki. I'm James." It was the first time an American had asked her name. It wouldn't be the last. That night, Yuki wrote, "His name is James. He has a wife named Sarah and a son named Michael. He wants to go home and be a teacher. He is not a demon. He is just a boy who misses his family. They are all just people. We are all just people. How did we forget that? How did we ever forget?" The true test came 3 months into their stay. A new group of American soldiers arrived at the hospital, survivors of a Japanese POW camp. These men had been starved, beaten, tortured. Some had watched friends die from cruelty that was almost impossible to imagine. They carried not just physical scars, but a hatred that burned white-hot. When they saw Japanese nurses working in the hospital, the reaction was immediate. "Get them out!" one soldier screamed. "Get those Japs away from me!" "They tortured us!" another shouted. "They killed my friends. And now they're here, taking care of us? Is this some kind of sick joke?" The Japanese nurses retreated, fear flooding back. Here it was, the hatred they had expected all along. Here was the monster they had been warned about. For a moment, Yuki was certain that everything they had experienced was about to be undone, that the real punishment was finally beginning. But then Dr. Hartley stepped forward. "I understand your anger," he said to the former POWs. His voice was calm but firm. "What you went through was inhuman. No one should suffer what you suffered, and you have every right to hate." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But these women didn't hurt you. These women are nurses. They were captured in the jungle, starving and terrified, convinced we were going to kill them. They had been told the same lies about us that we were told about them. And do you know what they've been doing for the past 3 months?" He gestured around the hospital. "They've been saving American lives. They've held the hands of dying soldiers. They've changed bandages and administered medicine, and sat with men in pain when no one else could. They've proven that cruelty is not the only way, that hatred doesn't have to win." The doctor's voice cracked. "I've seen what hate does. I've seen it on both sides, and I'm tired of it. These women chose to help instead of hate. I'm asking you to do the same." Silence filled the room. The former POWs stared at the doctor, then at the Japanese nurses huddled near the wall. Yuki felt Hanako trembling beside her. One of the soldiers, a thin man with haunted eyes and scars on his wrists, stepped forward. He looked at Yuki for a long moment, then he spoke. "You really saved American lives?" Yuki nodded. "Yes," she said in English. "We try. We are nurses. Helping is what we do." The soldier studied her face. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay." He turned to the other former POWs. "She's right. They're nurses. That's all they are. Let's just let them do their job." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. By the end of 1945, arrangements were being made to send the Japanese nurses home. The war was over. Japan was occupied. The world was trying to rebuild from the ashes. Yuki received the news with mixed emotions she couldn't fully understand. Home. She would finally go home. But what was home anymore? Her city was rubble. Her father was dead. Her brother was still missing. Her mother was surviving on scraps in a country that had lost everything. And here, in this American hospital, she had found something unexpected. Purpose, respect, maybe even friendship. How could she explain to her mother that her captors had treated her better than her own country ever had? The night before they left, Dr. Hartley gathered all the Japanese nurses together. He had gifts for each of them, small medical kits containing supplies that would be precious in devastated Japan. Bandages, antiseptic, pain medication, things that could save lives in a country where medicine was scarce. "You're good nurses," he told them through the interpreter. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. What you did here, working alongside people you were taught to hate, healing wounds on both sides, that took more courage than fighting ever could." The ship that carried them back to Japan sailed through waters that had seen so many battles. Yuki stood on the deck, watching the horizon, thinking about everything that had happened. When they landed in Yokohama, the devastation was beyond anything they had imagined. The city was flattened. Survivors wandered through rubble, searching for food, for family, for hope. Children with bloated bellies begged on street corners. The smell of death hung in the air. Yuki found her mother living in a makeshift shelter on the outskirts of what used to be their neighborhood. When the old woman saw her daughter, healthy, clean, strong, she burst into tears. "I thought they would destroy you," her mother whispered. "I thought I would never see you again." "They saved me," Yuki said softly. "The Americans saved me, Mother. Everything we were told, it wasn't true." Her mother didn't understand. How could she? She had lost everything to a war that America had won. But Yuki knew. She carried the truth inside her like a small flame, warm and persistent. Yuki went on to become a nursing instructor. For 40 years, she trained young Japanese nurses, teaching them not just medical skills, but something deeper. "A nurse doesn't see nationality," she would tell her students. "A nurse sees a person in pain. That's all. That's everything. When you're holding someone's hand as they suffer, it doesn't matter what flag they were born under. They're human. You're human. That's the only thing that matters." She kept Dr. Hartley's medical kit until the day she died. She kept her diary too, the small notebook where she had recorded her transformation from terrified prisoner to something else entirely. In 1985, 40 years after the war ended, Yuki received a letter from America. Dr. William Hartley had passed away, and his daughter had found her father's records from the war. Among them was a list of the Japanese nurses he had treated, and a note that said, "I hope they are well. I hope they found peace. They taught me that healing has no borders." Yuki read the letter through tears. Then she sat down and wrote a response to Dr. Hartley's daughter, telling her everything: the fear, the kindness, the birthday cake, the tears of an American doctor who saw enemies and chose to see patients instead. "Your father didn't just save our lives," she wrote. "He saved our souls. He showed us that humanity is stronger than hatred. I have spent my entire career trying to pass that lesson on. I will never stop. Don't touch me." That scream of terror, echoing in a Philippine field hospital in August 1945, had been born from lies. Lies about monsters who didn't exist. Lies about enemies who were really just people. And so Dr. Hartley's tears became more than a moment of emotion. They became proof that compassion can exist even in the darkest times. For those Japanese nurses, the memory of an American doctor crying for their suffering became a symbol of contradiction, but also of hope. It reminded them that enemies are made, not born, that hatred is taught, not natural, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose kindness when cruelty would be easier. The nurses who screamed in fear that day went on to live long lives. They became mothers, grandmothers, teachers, and they passed down a story that their grandchildren still tell, the story of the American doctor who chose to heal instead of hate. As Yuki told her students for 40 years, anyone can be cruel. It takes no courage to hate, but to show mercy to your enemy. That requires a strength most people never find. That is the true test of humanity, and it is a test worth passing. And that is a story worth remembering. In a world that often seems divided by hate, stories like this remind us what we can be, what we should be, what, on our best days, we actually are. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more true accounts from World War II history. These stories, buried by time, still speak to us today. Share them. Remember them. Let them change you the way Dr. Hartley's tears changed those nurses.